In this video, you are going to see my best effort on Zwift so far. The question is it going to be enough for a heavily stacked B group? Let's find out. In this race, I was doing the weekly ZWIFT Racing Series, this time on Park Perimeter Loop in New York City, which is my favorite world to ride in. I was doing this race on Wednesday, 6 p.m. in hopes that the primetime fighting would be already over and I would have slightly higher chances to compete. However, as you surely know, ZWIFT Racing Series is very popular, and my suspicion confirmed when I saw 161 riders in the starting pen, and my any chance to compete went out of the window when I saw very good B riders in the chat claiming they were going for the GC time. So by that time, I knew it was going to be another instance of me trying to survive in the front group, but there was no reason for me to give up before the race even started, and I was firmly decided that I would give it my all. Park Perimeter Loop is a very interesting course because it's basically never flat. It's either up or down, which means you are either pushing or trying to recover. The tricky part about this course is, apart from a very slight uphill at the start, it starts with downhill section. So we are getting basically recovery period at the start that you don't really need. And it's quite the opposite. The riders are fresh, so they are pushing even on the downhill, and you arrive at the first uphill section half spent already. This race was going to be 2 laps on this course, and obviously it was going to be decided on the hardest, longest climb on this course, which comes actually pretty early in the lap, but the rest of the course isn't a walk in the park either. It's basically undulating consistently until the finish line, and the finish line is at the top of a small hill, so we could expect some interesting battles until the end. As you can see, the effort right from the start was made very hard by the good riders, but I felt fairly good at this point, and I thought this might be my chance to keep with the strong guys. Here we arrived at the bottom of the first of the 2 uphill segments in this race, and right from the start it was clear it was going to be hard racing with the average power exceeding 5 watts per kilo. But at this point in this race I felt good, and I wouldn't say managed to keep up with the group, but I didn't lose too much of positions in a way that I couldn't recover at the following downhill segment. So I could check this uphill segment as a success for me. Recently, I've posted a poll on my community page asking about your opinion about which duration on your power duration curve is most important for Zwift racing, whether it is 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, or 20 minutes. Majority of you think it is 5 minutes power, which I would agree with, but this is the course that I would say 1 minute power is the king, because they are not sustained climbs and sustained efforts, but you really need to punch up the uphills, otherwise you will get dropped very, very fast. When I was in the starting pen and saw who was racing this event, I thought it would be success if I managed to keep up with the group for at least a lap. Obviously, the more the better, but it probably wasn't very realistic to expect I could go with these guys until the finish banner. Still, I felt very good at this point. I did what I expected of myself, we've crossed the lap banner together in a single group, and we started fighting on the next lap. At the start of the second lap, basically the guys who were leading the effort noticed that we were on track to beat the GC time. So then the real racing started, and the two main guys started to rotate in pulling. And that was when I felt it was going to be the end of me, because at that point I was drafting and I was hurting pretty bad. And we were still on the first downhill section towards the big climb. Here you can see the start of the second climb, and what is positive for me is I didn't get dropped right away, which I sort of expected. I managed to hang onto the group for a little bit, and then I even popped the arrow power up to stay with them as long as possible. But obviously, then the inevitable happened, and there came a point where I just couldn't go with them anymore. And it wasn't very far off the summit of the climb, but at that point, I was without energy and got finally dropped. However, that didn't mean I was going to give up and slack during the rest of the race. And thankfully, very quickly after we got dropped, the group of chasers formed, and we were going together basically until the end, which was really helpful, because in a group, obviously, you can maintain way higher effort than if you are going alone. As you can see in the chat, the front guys were still switching in the efforts to pull, and I have to tip the hat to those guys, because I think they were hurting really bad, but they showed admirable dedication to the effort to beat the GC time, and we need to give kudos for that. At this point, we started the last kilometer of what is almost 20-kilometer race, and I started to prepare for what I'm best at, which is the finishing sprint. My strategy was to beat as many of the guys riding with me in the chasing group as possible. I planned to launch the attack at the bottom of the last hill before the finish line, and I will let you see how that went.